My brother's social media status currently says confused because for the past year he has been researching where to go for his higher studies. Like my dear brother, there are lakhs of youngsters in India who dream of a foreign degree and end up spending billions of dollars on it. So when last week the UGC released draft regulations allowing foreign universities to set up campuses in India, I thought the decision would cheer my brother up. But his reaction was rather lukewarm. Why? Firstly, it may take some years before foreign universities set up an India campus. And those that do may not even be the ones he is targeting. So not surprisingly, Indian universities have reacted rather strongly to UGC's move, which in their words rolls out the red carpet for foreign institutions when Indian universities are struggling.
Hi, my name is Nandini Singh.
Hi, this is Rohan.
As someone who's looking to pursue my master's, I would surely opt for a foreign university if available in India, from the cost perspective.
I want to pursue a postgraduate degree in public policy. I don't think the rigor, the infrastructure, facility, the student crowd, and of course the opportunity can be replicated in a local branch.
Availability of an exchange student program would also be a plus.
Even if a reputed international university were to open a branch in India, I'm not sure I wouldn't be too keen on joining.
The moot issue though is, why does India need foreign universities? Is it only to stem the outflow of students and loss of revenue? Or is it to provide Indian students with higher quality education closer home? Is it to help Indian institutions compete and improve themselves? Or better still, is it to become a global education hub like many other countries? It's Friday the 13th of January. I'm Kalpana Pathak from The Economic Times, and you are listening to A Foreign Degree Made in India on The Morning Brief. In today's episode, we seek answers to these questions and more with Professor Pankaj Chandra, Vice Chancellor Ahmedabad University, Professor M. Jagdish Kumar, Chairman UGC, India's higher education regulator, and Dr. Ravina Agrawal, Senior Advisor of the Mumbai Global Center of Columbia University, an Ivy League institution from the US. With over 1,000 universities and 42,000 colleges, India's higher education system is the third largest in the world, next only to China and the US. But hold on, India also has the highest number of students studying abroad after China. So much so that the latest immigration numbers from the UK and the US show that Indian students now surpass Chinese in these countries.
Hi, I am Sharayu Shenoy.
Hi, I am Rutuj Parag Kusurkar.
I am pursuing MSc in Strategic Marketing course from Maynooth University, Ireland.
I am studying genetic genomics and bioinformatics at SUNY Buffalo. I chose SUNY Buffalo because of its strong neuroscience department.
Good part about this university is that it provides you with good facilities. There is on-campus stay.
After I finish my master's, I plan on doing a PhD.
I always wanted to study in abroad. I wanted to explore outside India and understand the education system over here and the culture.
I wanted to leave India and go to the US for my master's and my PhD because of high funding, good opportunities, better pay.
In fact, the Indian government lost $17 billion or over 1 lakh crore of rupees in 2020 due to students moving abroad for higher education. And here's the interesting part. While India sent 5 lakh students abroad, only 49,000 foreign students came to India, mostly from countries like Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Tanzania, and Sudan. So looking at these numbers, one would think the UGC's decision to welcome foreign universities in India is great. But there are many unhappy voices in the academic circles who think this defies India's vision to be Vishwaguru and Atmanirbhar in the education sector. Professor Pankaj Chandra, who has been heading Ahmedabad University, a private non-profit research entity with board members from the Arvind Mills to Torrent Group to Zydus Cadila, says he has not understood why the country needs foreign universities.
Who says that they are important? Maybe it's important to some stakeholders, but that university globally wants to set up an institution in India is understandable. Some university may look to India because India has a larger population, and at the same time, institutions outside want students, alumni, and resources. So that some institution wants to do it is possibly understandable. That some stakeholders might think that this is a way of increasing GER and getting more good institutions to come in is also understandable. But whether this really changes the nature of higher education in India is a very big question mark. I think nature of higher education in the country changes when large majority of institutions in that country change themselves. I haven't seen anywhere where institutions come from outside and create an environment that rejuvenates, that grows, that become the main players as far as the higher education landscape is concerned. There may be some people in the bureaucracy or some people in the government who I know they've been discussing for last almost 20 years. And there's this desire to get the topmost institution to come. Every time when this issue gets raised, the institutions that get talked about are some of the top institutions in the world. And you have to ask, none of those top institutions have any campuses abroad. Why would they want to come to India? And also when a large majority of them actually line up to go to these institutions. So what is the incentive for these institutions to come to India? See, what are the countries where many global institutions have gone and set up satellite campuses? First and foremost, there are very few who have gone and set up institutions. I should say there are three that come to mind. First is Hong Kong, Singapore, and Middle East. These are places where some of these institutions have set up satellite campuses. The only three institutions that come to mind are NUS in Abu Dhabi and in Shanghai. Then you have Duke Kunshan and in China, and you have Yale and US. Yale and US, after about 10 years, they've now folded up, and that institution has gone into NUS. So you barely have two institutions of repute who hold campuses across countries. And they've not really been exemplars of great research either. So I'm not quite sure what contribution they have made to the institutions, to the countries where they've established. Well, there's one other institution, I should say, that has actually done well, and that is INSEAD. But then INSEAD is just a professional school with its campus now in 3 countries. And they probably are the only ones who've seamlessly managed these campuses by ensuring that good quality faculty are located at different campuses. And they all play a role as if they are part of INSEAD per se, and not necessarily in a localized campus.
So, what kind of institutes do you think would come to India if the top ones are not interested?
I think my own reading is that there may be some whose faculty are interested in doing work on India. They might want to have some easy access to India through this process. Top 500 institutions also have a second rung and a third rung and a fourth rung. They're not alike. And maybe some of them are looking to India as a big market to take resources out. And I think they might be the ones interested in coming. But does that change India? I don't think so. And there are many, many challenges to that.
Could you list a few challenges that you're talking about, Professor Chandra?
The biggest challenge is I see this effort as one where you are completely forsaking the growth of public institutions in India. We've had phenomenal public institutions in this country, and we've ignored them tremendously over a period of time. Our focus ought to be on how do we improve public institutions? How do we enable other private institutions that are coming up in the country, whose founders, whose trusts have taken a call that they want to build institutions out of India, build globally competitive institutions. They need attention. They need resources. They need autonomy. They need many other things. They need less control. And I think that's, to me, is a challenge in higher education. Per se, very honestly, I have no problem for any global institution to come set up in India. A good institution becomes part of this larger institutional process. It doesn't bother me. But what bothers me is that you need to provide similar resources, similar facilities, similar environments, similar rules and regulation for domestic institutions to just go do very well. I think this has to start with autonomy, the same kind of autonomy that these institutions get. I think all Indian institutions should get that. Why should public institutions not be able to set their own salaries if they go and raise their own resources? If they have surpluses, why can't they just invest those surpluses and bring them back into investment of the institution? Suppose there's somebody, investor globally, who wants to invest in an Indian institution and says, oh, you know what? I want to repatriate those funds back, some surpluses. Will the rules and regulation allow them to do it? So far, we've not allowed them to do it. So if this is a mechanism that UGC is actually using to say, okay, I'm testing waters, I am going to increase the autonomy of some of these institutions, and then I will use it to change the autonomy of Indian institutions, I welcome it. The key issue is autonomy. You can't have institutions in India be controlled on a day-to-day basis by UGC, and at the same time, you start giving enormous amount of autonomy to others. I think those institutions coming in deserve autonomy like all other institutions in this country. So that's my challenge with this approach. I don't have any other concern about it.
You were part of the group of IIMs which are fighting for autonomy when you were heading IIM Bangalore. How have things improved over the last decade when actually IIMs were fighting for their autonomy?
Well, even before that, I was part of Yashpal committee. And then there was a committee that was set up to look at autonomy of central institutions. And both those two committees were very strongly urging UGC and the government of the day to essentially allow autonomy to these institutions, which is, well, how admissions are done and how fees is set, how faculty is selected, and how vice chancellors and directors are selected, how boards are selected, how the academic curriculum is stated. Now, none of that has changed in last 2 decades. Even today, vice chancellors are selected in state governments or in Delhi. It's an institution that should select vice chancellors. As soon as you say, well, every institution, every public institution should use a test A or a test B for selection of its students, you are interfering with the autonomy of the institution. So if the UGC says that the Indian institutions are autonomous, I think UGC doesn't understand what autonomy means. We need to explain to UGC what is autonomy, what does autonomy mean for academic institutions. When the UGC starts to define the process through which faculty ought to be selected, that's not autonomy. When UGC starts to tell every institution what they should do on a Monday and then on a Tuesday and then 1st of the month and 7th of the month and so on and so forth, that's not autonomy. In fact, if at all, it has become even more controlled than what it was ever before. Is UGC going to apply the same conditions, same environment to these new institutions coming in? If they lay out. So I think there's a bigger debate around autonomy.
So, Professor Chadda, do you think that these provisions that UGC has spoken about in the draft for foreign universities could create an uneven playing field for Indian institutions?
You know, what it will create is a sense amongst academics that if you need more freedom, you ought to go to these institutions. And academics are always looking for autonomy. If I have to raise fees or I have to do something and I have to go to the government each time and there's a fee control committee and there's all kinds of things there, then at some point of time, the administrators and academics will think, what the hell? There are already a host of these other institutions. let me move there. And the consequence of that would be this: actually, we will not be paying attention to the real challenges that our institutions face, and we won't be able to help them become better. India will have to make its public institutions top class. And anything that distracts them from not becoming top class, I think will hurt Indian institutions for sure. And I'm not blaming these other institutions coming in, but I think in that process, if we completely deprive the Indian institutions of the same privileges, okay, of investments, of autonomy, of facilities, if somebody will go and ask if an academic in a state university and say, but why are we not setting our own salary structure? Answer would the government have. So long as these people go and raise their own resources, will the government still allow public institution to change the salary structure, change the amount of money that they give to a PhD student or a postdoc or someone else? So I think it's those kind of issues that will probably deprive Indian institutions of another opportunity. If I were them, I would have said, I'm going to invite these institutions globally, and here are these privileges I give, and I'll give it to Indian institutions also. Now you go compete with these guys. I think that would be the right way to go about helping Indian institutions grow, not creating an enclave which says, you know what, here are 20 institutions, 30 or 50 or 100, whatever they are your best institutions. And this will lift the average in the country. Average won't get lifted unless the average of 30,000 colleges and 8,000 or 10,000 universities that exist, that get lifted. And I think somewhere or the other, UGC will have to think about how to lift the average of these institutions.
My colleagues Rika Bhattacharya and Sriradha Basu wrote to over a dozen international universities, including Harvard, MIT, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, Caltech, Monash, and Chicago Booth, asking if they would set up branch campuses in India. Not one university spokesperson said they have such plans. So clearly, the elite set from Harvard to Stanford to Oxford are against branching out to retain their ethos at home. But then there are others like Manchester, Nottingham, and Lancaster who have spread their wings. Interestingly, though, most of the international branch campuses of global universities are concentrated in 4 countries, including China, Malaysia, Qatar, and Singapore. On the other hand, some of India's leading private educational institutes like Manipal University, SP Jain Institute, and Birla Institute of Technology and Science also operate branch campuses in foreign nations, including Australia, Mauritius, Uzbekistan, Singapore, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Even our globally acclaimed IITs are currently planning campuses abroad. Columbia University, an Ivy League institution, has been in India since 2010. So I asked Ravina Agarwal, Senior Advisor for Columbia's India Center, if the university would look at setting up a campus in India. Ravina told me Columbia University won't open a campus in India. It has a global center in Mumbai, which was set up in 2010.
If you have centers which are more nimble and flexible and low investment, you can be in countries that are not necessarily very wealthy. Because, Columbia University, of course, is an Ivy League university, and especially for India, very expensive to study at Columbia University. And so setting up campuses, when we thought about it, we thought we would maybe only be able to be in countries that could afford it. So there were several ways of thinking, and, that brought us to the conclusion that we wouldn't necessarily be establishing a campus in India or in other places. At least for now, that is the thinking. But that we would instead operate through a network of global centers.
What kind of research does the Global Center support and take up?
So the Columbia Global Centers Mumbai is part of a network of now 10 global centers of Columbia University. Some of the other countries where our centers are located include Jordan, Beijing in China, and Paris in France. And the Paris Center actually is kind of the only campus that we have in another country. And we also have a center in Santiago in Chile, in Rio in Brazil, And now we opened the newest center in Athens in Greece. The Mumbai Center, like other centers, conducts innovative and interdisciplinary research. We design educational opportunities for students and professionals, and we disseminate research to wider publics in academia, government, civil society, and the private sector. And our programs include areas such as environmental sustainability, health and medicine, education and culture, and business and economic opportunity.
Although the National Education Policy 2020 has recommended allowing universities in the top 100 categories of World University rankings to operate in India, the UGC draft expands that number to 500. Will this dilute the quality of institutions we are targeting? UGC Chairman M. Jagdish Kumar tells me that nearly top 200 universities in the world have expressed interest in having a presence in India. Why does India need foreign higher education institutions or foreign universities?
You see, internationalization of our higher education is one of our objectives. And internationalization has two components. One, enabling our Indian institutes to go outside India and establish the campuses there. And UGC is working on this enabling regulation. And the other part of the internationalization is encouraging the top institutions in foreign countries to come and set up their campus in India. Now, why are we internationalizing our higher education? Let me look at the second component. When we are inviting the foreign institutions to come and set up their campuses, it has certain objectives. One of them is we know that every year lakhs of students go abroad for higher education. In 2022 itself, about 4.5 lakh students left our country for higher education in other countries. And some estimates say that this number will reach about 1.8 million in the coming year and next. This means that there is a huge appetite among the Indian students for high quality education. Wherever it is available, whether it is in India or abroad, they are willing to go and acquire that knowledge and those skills. But at the same time, we also have a large number of other students who may not like to go to a foreign country because of family conditions, because of financial situation, but they want to have access to high quality international education right in India. So it is to meet this objective that we are now inviting the foreign educational institutions to come and set up their campuses in India. So this will help our students while cutting down the costs on higher education. At least the living costs will be minimal when they live in India and study in the campuses of these foreign institutions. And that's the reason why we are encouraging the foreign institutions to come to India.
So, sir, has the UGC received any proposal from foreign universities to open campuses in India? Which are these universities, if you can divulge the name or the geographies that you have received interest from?
See, first of all, there was a survey done by the National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration some time ago. And they found that nearly top 200 universities in the world, they have expressed their interest in considering India as their destination. We already have discussions with some countries from Europe, such as France and Italy. They are interested in establishing their campuses here. And also, whenever a foreign delegation comes to UGC for discussions, they show very keen interest in looking at this possibility of establishing a campus in India. The only thing that we have to do is open up our regulatory system and come up with regulations which will facilitate the establishment of such campuses in our country.
By when do we see this concretizing and materializing and universities actually starting to apply to the Indian government?
So UGC is writing to the ambassadors in 67 countries, and we are writing to top class institutions across the world. And it takes time for them to understand these regulations and carry out the internal discussions within their own institutions before they take a decision. And after that, they had to apply to UGC. UGC has a certain time period. Within 90 days, the final decision will be given to the university. Then the university has to form a company or sign up a joint venture and so on. And to build the infrastructure and to recruit the faculty, it will take at least 2 years. That is why UGC has mentioned in the regulations that we will give the letter of intent. And in the letter of intent, we will tell the universities to set up their campus within about 2 years by carrying out all these activities. And in exceptional cases, if they require additional time, we may give. So if I look at the time frame, I think in the next 2-3 years, we will definitely have some campuses of the foreign universities in the country.
So I read your columns and your interviews in the media where you have mentioned that foreign institutions will get a lot of autonomy. That has been a pain point for a lot of Indian institutions that we spoke to. They said though UGC is rolling out the red carpet for international universities, the Indian counterparts have lacked autonomy. They are highly regulated and poorly governed. What is your comment there?
I would definitely like to bring some clarity on this issue. The Indian institutions have a lot of autonomy. For example, UGC doesn't interfere with fixing the tuition fees of any university, be it a central university, state university, or private university. And UGC also doesn't interfere with the academic programs of any of our Indian institutions. It is their statutory bodies, such as the Board of Studies, Academic Council, and Executive Council, which will finally design the curriculum and syllabus. UGC doesn't interfere with the salary structure of these universities. They are free to decide their own salary structure because they are paying from their own revenues, from their own resources. So tell me, in which area our Indian universities do not have autonomy? They have enormous autonomy. And the national education policy also says that since the foreign universities which come here to set up their campuses, they have their own resources and we are not giving them any funds. So therefore, they should have complete autonomy as we are giving to our Indian universities, whether it is the kind of academic programs they want to run or the admission process, faculty and staff recruitment, and also the tuition fee structure. So it's the same kind of autonomy that is available both for the Indian institutions and also the foreign institutions. UGC doesn't like to micromanage the universities and interfere with their functioning. In fact, during the last few years, if you see, UGC has not interfered with any of the functioning of the universities other than putting efforts to maintain the standards of higher education.
One of the contentions that the Indian institutes have with this draft regulation is that all the provisions that UGC has listed out for foreign universities could create an uneven playing field for Indian institutions. Your comments there?
We want to provide multiple options to our students to empower them to have access to high quality education. And if the foreign institutions are setting up their campuses here, and if they are offering high quality academic programs there, it is for the other institutions also to raise the standards of the academic programs and programs in their own institutions. So the presence of these campuses will actually provide a kind of healthy competition among the institutions to improve themselves. And part two, I think we need to look at these campuses as an opportunity to collaborate with them and have joint research projects, joint collaborations with these institutions. We need to look at them as an opportunity rather than a threat. What we are saying that these campuses can admit not only Indian students, but students from across the world.
UGC's move to allow branch campuses of international universities seems encouraging. Why should students who do not have the means to go abroad for a better education be deprived of an option closer home? But will the quality and rigor of education be maintained? Will the top global universities open branch campuses in India? And does all this have to come at the cost of UGC being discriminatory towards Indian universities? If foreign universities are given autonomy on a platter, why do Indian universities have to fight for the same? Universities and institutes in India are deprived of funds. Their laboratories and libraries have not been replenished. Over 11,000 faculty positions are vacant in central universities, IITs, and IIMs in the country. Many universities, despite their decades and century-old history, lack endowment funds and alumni networks. So should we not get our own house in order before welcoming others? Recently, a bunch of students from the Harvard Business School under Dean Srikant Datar visited India as part of their India Trek program, interacting with entrepreneurs and businessmen. So excursions are fine for that immersive experience, but a campus in Mumbai or Delhi, well, that needs a whole different syllabus. Don't forget that to attract global academic talent, you need better living conditions, R&D facilities, the softer side of living and thriving for families to move and settle. Foreign universities may be good, but shouldn't Atmanirbhar Bharat philosophy also touch India's higher education sector? Why shouldn't the land of Takshashila and Nalanda look at strengthening its domestic education sector before opening gates to foreign universities? When India's own Ivy Leagues, the IITs and IIMs and other top universities can produce future CEOs for Fortune 500 companies and give top universities their deans, can't we trust them to make India the global education hub for the world? It's time the regulators and institutes sit across the table to redefine rules and redefine autonomy. Indian students deserve quality education, and they will flock to whoever provides it to them, be it Indian institutes or foreign. You were listening to A Foreign Degree Made in India on the Morning Brief, and this is Kalpana Pathak signing off. Thank you, Professor Chandra, Professor Kumar, and Dr. Ravina for your insights, and a special thanks to my colleague Arijit Barman for all his help with this episode. This podcast was brought to you by Team Economic Times. Thank you for tuning in. Show producer for this episode, Vinay Joshi. Sound designer, Rajas Naik. Executive producers Anupriya Bahadur, Anirban Chaudhary, and Arijit Barman. We hope you like this episode. Do share it on your social media networks. The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday and is available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon, and Google Podcasts, as well as JioSaavn. Do tune in to ET Play, our latest platform for all audio content, including The Morning Brief. Have a great weekend.